In 1978, a member of the British royal family chose to marry the woman he loved, and a 300-year-old law erased him from the line of succession the same day. The law was the Act of Settlement of 1701, passed by Parliament 13 years after it had already removed one Catholic king, James II, and replaced him with his Protestant daughter and her husband. The act was designed to make sure that crisis never repeated itself, barring not just Catholics from the throne, but anyone who married one, regardless of how distant their own claim to succeed might be. For nearly 3 centuries it sat quietly in the background of royal life, rarely tested, until Prince Michael of Kent, the Queen's first cousin and a grandson of King George V through his father Prince George, Duke of Kent, fell in love with a divorced Austrian baroness named Marie Christine von Reibnitz. She had been born in what was then Czechoslovakia and raised largely in Mozambique and Britain, and she was Catholic. Her first marriage had just ended, and the Catholic Church had annulled it only 2 months before her wedding to Michael. Under the letter of a law written for an entirely different century, none of that history mattered as much as her faith. The moment he married her, Michael's name came off the list of people eligible to inherit the throne, with no committee review, no court hearing, and no formal notice beyond the fact of the marriage itself becoming public. Michael had a choice available to him that other royals facing the same law sometimes took: ask his bride to change her faith and keep his place. He didn't ask her to. In 1978, he married Marie Christine as she was, in a civil ceremony rather than a religious one, since the Church of England could not conduct a wedding for a divorced Catholic bride under its own rules at the time. He accepted the constitutional consequence that came with it without public complaint, and at 36 years old, dropped from a working member of the line of succession to a private citizen with a royal title and nothing more. None of this happened in a vacuum of public awareness. The line of succession itself is a working legal document, maintained and published, listing everyone with a theoretical claim to the throne in strict order, however distant. Michael's removal in 1978 meant his name simply did not appear on that list for the following 37 years, while his own children, born after the marriage, were never placed in this succession at all under the law, as it then stood. Since the act disqualified the parent making the Catholic marriage, rather than the children who came from it in every generation after, he was not the only member of the family the rule ever touched. A decade later, in 1988, the Earl of St. Andrews, son of the Duke of Kent, married a Catholic academic named Silvana Tomaselli and lost his place the same way. In 2008, Lord Nicholas Windsor's Catholic marriage triggered the same result, and that same year, Lady Marina Windsor was removed from the succession entirely for converting to Catholicism herself, not for marrying anyone. The rule didn't care about circumstance. It applied the same way whether the Catholic marriage happened in 1978 or 30 years later. Between them, these cases meant that by the early 2000s, 4 members of an extended royal family that still numbered only a few dozen people in the working line of succession had been quietly struck from it. All under a single sentence of law that had never been substantially reconsidered since Queen Anne sat on the throne. Each removal was recorded the same way, through a quiet update to the published order of succession, rather than any public announcement, so that most Britons, following the family in the newspapers, had no reason to notice any of it happening in real time. Not every royal engagement ended the same way. In 2008, Peter Phillips, the Queen's grandson, was engaged to a Canadian named Autumn Kelly, who had been baptized Catholic as a child. Before the wedding, Kelly formally joined the Church of England. Phillips kept his place in the line of succession without ever needing Parliament to change anything. The same law that permanently altered Michael's status in 1978 could apparently be avoided entirely 3 decades later, with one quiet conversion. Princess Michael of Kent, as she became known, was less willing to let the arrangement pass without comment. In a 2005 interview with The Guardian, more than a quarter century into her marriage, she pointed out that Britain had laws against discrimination for almost everyone else. "There is a law against discrimination in England," she said, "but there is a different law for the royal family." She added that there had been talk, at the time of their engagement, that her husband's rights would have been restored if she had simply changed her religion. She never did. Whether that particular claim was accurate or simply engagement-era gossip, the fact remains that Peter Phillips's fiancée resolved the identical legal problem 30 years later by changing her own faith instead. The law that had defined Michael's constitutional status for 37 years was finally undone, not because of his case specifically, but because of a broader modernization. The process began in October 2011, when the leaders of 16 Commonwealth countries, where the monarch remains head of state, met in Perth, Australia, and agreed unanimously to change the ancient rules of succession together. Since Britain could not simply rewrite them alone without the other realms following suit, the Succession to the Crown Act that followed from that agreement, passed by Parliament in 2013, ended the automatic disqualification for marrying a Catholic, alongside changing the rules of male preference that had previously placed younger sons ahead of older daughters. It came into force on the 26th of March, 2015, once every one of those 16 countries had passed the matching legislation of their own. On that date, Prince Michael of Kent, then in his 70s, was formally restored to the line of succession, alongside the Earl of St. Andrews and the other relatives the same rule had once pushed aside. By that point, decades removed from the marriage that had triggered it all, his position in the order was almost entirely symbolic. He had spent his adult life as a naval officer, a businessman, and a working royal representing the family at ceremonial events abroad, never once treated during those 37 years as though his eventual place on the list might realistically matter. Reinstatement changed his legal standing without changing a single obligation or expectation placed on him the day before. Prince Michael of Kent spent 37 years as a member of the royal family with no legal claim to the throne he was born into, over a marriage that no one in his family ever asked him to give up. Marie Christine, who had never once changed her faith across all those years, lived to see the reversal, watching a law that had shaped the first 4 decades of her marriage quietly stop applying to her husband in his mid-70s. When Parliament finally rewrote the rule in 2015, it didn't apologize for the law, and no minister stood up to acknowledge what it had cost the people it had applied to. It simply stopped applying it, and quietly put his name back on a list he had never asked to be removed from in the first place.